with all due respect, you're giving us hypocrisy. You're not willing to call out Republicans in those Republican-led states that have all that crime, yet you want to nitpick a few cities here and there.
Take away from this thing with the Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely case is that it's really in Americans' best interest to just try their best to just get out of these liberal cities like New York and Chicago and Baltimore, because I've been to all those cities, unfortunately, multiple times, and I see how bad they are. And I know it's not practical for people who live there to just up and leave, but seeing what these things are turning into, I think it's really in people's best interest, if they can, to get out of these cities just in general.
So you think all the major crimes in this country are only committed in what you would call liberal cities? I disagree with that assessment that you're making.
Well, I didn't say all the major crimes, but the majority of cities in the country are liberal, and they're pretty much all very terrible. I mean, they're rampant with crime.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Not statistically.
Sure.
Statistically, it's not. And I was surprised. I thought in New York City that a homeless guy who was mentally ill would probably get more deference from the citizens in New York City. But they, as liberal as they are, they still saw it.
Jordan?
They still backed the Marine who engaged and defended. So I was a little surprised because New York is very left-leaning.
Oh, yeah. Look, there are Republican individuals in every single Democrat city and state. There's no question. And who knows, who was on the jury in terms of which way they swung politically. But I think this case was kind of pretty cut and dry, and I was not surprised at all when Daniel Penny was found innocent. But again, it just leads me back to what I was saying before. These city, I mean, I've been to Philadelphia more times than I can count. It's a terrible, disgusting city, and yeah, again, they're all ran by liberals. You can draw a very straight line to these cities.
So there are no cities that are dangerous in Texas or in Florida. There are no dangerous cities that have Republican mayors. Sir, that's completely ridiculous. And if you're talking about New York and Philadelphia, look at per capita how many people live in those cities. The chances are when you have a lot of people living in a city, more people than the normal everyday city, you're probably going to have more crime. And that's not because of liberal
Florida's
has some of this, right. I was just going to mention Florida.
Republican,
yeah,
has some
Look
of the
at the drug issues and the serious crimes that are committed in Florida. Are you saying people should leave Florida because it's liberal? I mean, I don't understand what you're saying. What are you saying, sir?
No, what I said is like all the other cities that are liberal. It's not like it's 50%.
Is Florida liberal? Is Florida liberal?
No, Florida.
Who's the governor of Florida?
I'm just saying statistically, that's not accurate.
It's not statistically accurate.
Are you saying these cities are not liberal?
I'm saying the crime is not higher in liberal cities than it is in.
Yes, it is. I mean, you look Chicago is like one of the worst cities in the country. Their gun crime and homicide rate is through the roof, and it's consistently liberal.
And that's because of liberals. That's because of liberals and liberal policies. Is that what you're saying?
Liberal policies. Mostly, yeah. I mean,
Gotcha.
There are other factors into. I mean, there are like areas that are primarily black or unfortunately.
Well, this is the problem with our country because when anything happens in this country, like crimes are committed, you blame liberals for it, and I find that to be. I don't know if you're being intellectually honest, quite frankly.
No,
sir.
I didn't. I'm not saying that all crimes are directly linked to just liberals. Of course, there are plenty of. Look, there are a lot of.
Where do you live?
Republican parts of the country.
Where do you live?
Where do I live? I live in Pennsylvania.
You live in Pennsylvania. Who's the governor of Pennsylvania?
Josh Shapiro.
How's Pennsylvania doing as far as crime, as a state?
As a state overall, it's not that bad. I mean,
not that bad. So would you praise Governor Shapiro, who's a Democrat?
Sure. I think he's a relatively good.
So he's relatively good.
Who he is.
Okay. Well, thank you for your honesty. He's a relatively good governor. You're saying crime as a whole is not so bad in Pennsylvania.
Can I chime in for a
Go
second?
ahead. Yeah.
To stay out of
Please.
Philadelphia.
So Missouri has the highest murder rate, particularly in cities like St. Louis and Kansas City. Louisiana is ranked second in a list of the most dangerous states, and Pennsylvania is ranked third in a list of the most dangerous states. So I think that to my point,
Missouri's liberal. I've never heard anybody say that Missouri's liberal. That's very interesting.
So statistically, what he was saying is
city in Missouri is
probably not completely.
So you might find a city in Missouri that might be dangerous. You could find a mayor that might be liberal. So because of that, you're going to take the entire state and blame liberals, even though he just said that Missouri is the most dangerous state.
Multiple times. It's not like it's just these one-off times.
Okay, but he just gave you the statistics of 2 states that are 1 and 2 that nobody would consider a liberal state, and then your response is, well, you could probably find a city, and you don't even know
liberal states, liberal cities.
What city in Missouri then? Tell me.
We can twist the news however we want. I'm just saying that I think saying that the crime is automatically higher because it's a liberal state is not accurate. I would say that the liberal states have lighter penalties on crime, and they want less people in prison.
Which leads to more crime.
Well, that depends on if you believe in recidivism.
If they commit terrible crimes, you keep them in prison. But I mean, look, again, it's not like these random one-off cities. It's so many. I mean, there are cities in California, there are parts of New Jersey, it's like all around the country. And again, Chicago is a prime example of just how much these policies have failed people. And I never really hear any legitimate argument. Yeah.
But Dave, you keep nitpicking and giving certain specific cities, but we're talking about the entire country and states. And you have Leonard, who just gave you a couple states that are overwhelmingly majority run by Republicans, and they're the top 2 states that have the most serious crimes. So your argument is not sticking, my friend.
And I'm not saying those states are worse. I'm just saying that it's pretty equal. You know, crime is crime. I don't think people choose a liberal state because they want
crime, but it's centered in these cities, which again are over
the population's
7 out of the
a lot bigger.
Right. That's true. I mean, it has a lot to do with population, but it's also 20 out of the top 30 cities. I believe 27 of them are ran by Democrats, and it's not like they've
I don't know
only been
what's
ran
that.
by
I would need to see.
Yeah, I would have to look at that statistic. All I can tell you is Leonard gave the top 2 states in this country, with all due respect, where you have the most serious of crimes.
I'm not disagreeing.
Well, we're talking about a country, and we're talking about states, and we're also talking about states that are run by Republicans. So if a state is run by, Dave's logic, hear me out, Dave. If a state is run by a Republican as a governor, and overwhelming Republicans run the state, and it's one of the highest crime rates in the country, you don't want to blame Republicans. But if you have a city in that state that might be dangerous, and it happens to have a mayor that's a Democrat, you want to blame liberals. You can't have it both ways, my friend, okay? I'm not doing what you're doing. I'm not taking the left and the right. See, now I'm getting a little heated. I'm not taking the left and the right and blaming them. Hold on.
That's fine.
Well, yeah, because I'm passionate, and I think your argument is absurd, with all due respect.
Well, look,
if you have a governor and running the state, last I checked, and you have a bunch of Republicans running cities, and you want to find one city that might be crime-ridden because they have a Democrat mayor.
Not one. That's
you are
I'm not just picking one.
You are nitpicking.
I'm not nitpicking.
You talk about Philadelphia and New York and Chicago. Some of the most
St. Louis, which is in Missouri.
Some of the most
agree with Brian. That's definitely cherry picking.
Some of the most overpopulated cities in the country. When you have more people per capita, hence, you're probably going to have more crime. But yet when we give you states that are overrun by Republicans, that are some of the most dangerous states to live in, you don't want to blame Republicans for anything, sir. I'm sorry, sir, but I disagree.
Those are look, there are Republican governors, and then there are also the mayors and of
so
the
you
liberal
care you
states,
care about
Detroit.
I get it,
Albuquerque.
Dave.
Those are
I get it, Dave, but you care about people that commit heinous crimes, then why would you vote for a guy that's a 34-count felon? If you care so much about crime and you care so much about bad people that are convicted of serious crimes, then why would you vote for a felon that says he wants to release people who attacked police officers on January 6th? And I'll take you for your word that you care about crime-ridden cities and you care about crime. So do I, sir. We agree. We're Americans. Then why would you vote for a guy that calls somebody who assaults a police officer a patriot and a hero? Please answer that.
Oh, look, I think for everything I like that he did, there's one or two things I think he did are dumb. I agree that that's a
No.
terrible thing,
That's not dumb. Dumb is when you lock your keys in your car. That's not dumb. It's despicable. When you call people,
yeah,
why would you vote for a despicable person? Then you admit what he said was despicable. If you care about crime, then why would you vote for a man?
He's a convicted felon.
Yeah. Why would you vote for a 34?
Because he was convicted on charges that a lot of people thought were completely
That's not accurate.
ridiculous.
That is not accurate.
Yes, it is. Yes,
if I would have, I'll give you an example. If me or Brian would have done it, we'd be in prison right now. Both of us would be locked up for a long time for the crimes that he committed, and also he has got to pay $86 million to a woman for defamation and for sexual misconduct.
Correct. So Leonard, so Dave, I agree with what Leonard.
In a civil.
David, here's my argument. Again, I already talked about January 6th. You're talking about crime-ridden cities, and you want to blame Democrats for these cities, right? But yet you don't want to talk about the guy who you voted for, who defied a subpoena for a year, who has 25 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape, and his letter accurately pointed out.
Accusations are meaningless.
Okay, well, he was found liable. I know all those 25 women are lying. I know you don't believe them. I know they're all,
but it's irrelevant what anybody thinks because he owes her $86 million.
Yeah, well, he owes her money and a lot of money, and he was found liable for sexual abuse. This is the 30.
In a civil case.
You can say whatever you want about your opinion of the 34 counts that he was found guilty of, but he's still a 34 count felon, and he's still the guy who called people patriots and hostages, who attacked people like Leonard, who physically assaulted police officers.
Who did what he did, I'm telling you, we'd already be in jail.
Agree. So I'm with you if you want to get together with us and say, hey, we got to do something about all the crime in this country. But don't preach to us about crime when you voted for a 34 count felon.
Then to crime in these countries.
Here's what I think.
Because I have yet.
If I submitted a fraudulent document to get a bigger loan to the tune of millions behind fraud, I wouldn't even be talking on the radio right now. I'd be in jail.
Right. That's
so
true.
What he did was patently, obviously, what we call prima facie evidence wrong.
So to answer your question, David, okay, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I would want Republicans and Democrats to come together a little bit more than they're going to be doing, because we know that Donald Trump is, for the most part, not willing to work with Democrats, to make sure that if people are breaking the law, nobody's above the law, and they're held to the highest account, including our politicians and including people that are in office. I find it hard to believe that you think that Donald Trump is that guy, that the party that calls themselves the Law and Order Party, who think that those people that did what they did on January 6th are some sort of heroes and freedom fighters. So
I never said he was that guy. I don't think he's going to fix these crimes in this country.
Well, they want to get rid of the FBI and close the building.
Yeah, that's what Kash Patel wants to do. He wants to close the FBI building, and these are serious people that you think are going to solve the problem.
Department of Justice.
They want to go after members of the media. They want to go after drag queens. They want to ban books. You know, Nancy Mace cares more about a trans woman going into a woman's bathroom than she cares about school shootings. And why would I say that? Because she's tweeted about women's bathrooms and trans women in bathrooms 500 times in the last 2 weeks. After a school shooting like Uvalde, when we lose 18 kids, she'll put out one tweet and she'll say, oh, thoughts and prayers. You think the Republicans are the people that are going to help us when it comes to law and order?
She has to care. She has to care about things in order of what you think is appropriate to care about.
And you think it's more, and you think it's more appropriate to put 100 times more energy into trans women in bathrooms than gun legislation?
Let me interrupt and give you something statistically accurate. Well, hold on one second. You brought up Illinois. Let's bring up Texas. Okay, so Texas murder rate is 4.7 per 100,000 people, and it's 13% higher than the average state. So does that mean that there are more? That's only one example of a state with a very high population.
Where are those murders happening in Texas?
I would have to look that up, but my guess would be
because that's a big. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but that's kind of telling one half of the story.
But the majority of the counties in Texas are Republican. I mean, you could talk about Dallas.
Yeah, I agree,
and
but
other
you could
places,
easily could find out that a lot of those murders or gun crime or whatever is happening. It could be happening in very specific.
David, I'll leave you with saying this. Okay, I appreciate the conversation. I do. I really do.
Thank you.
But
I do too.
But here's the thing, David. Right, and you're welcome to call back anytime. Here's the thing. We're talking about a man who's going to be the leader of the free world again, who has literally pardoned murderers. And people on the right had a problem with Joe Biden pardoning his son, a gun charge that most people would have never even been seen in court for, a man who was on drugs at the time. I'm not condoning his behavior. But what I am saying is this. Donald Trump pardoned murderers, people who murdered civilians in Iraq. He literally, you can look this up, he pardoned murderers.
Look, Republicans are hypocrites. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I mean, I agree to a lot of what you're saying.
I appreciate you saying that, but my argument still stands is that when you say, you know, liberals, get out of liberal cities. That's how this conversation started. When Leonard eloquently pointed out with the stats on his phone that the states that have the most serious crime are run by Republicans. So you're, with all due respect, you're giving us hypocrisy. You're not willing to call out Republicans in those Republican-led states that have all that crime, yet you want to nitpick a few cities here and there.
And I misspoke about Texas. It's violent crime.
Right.
4.7 people per 1,000, not 100,000.
Right. Governor Abbott, as I like to call Governor Abhole, is what I like